When Ryan's when it's time to begin, it's on the Review-A-Wai with John Pollock and Wai Ting, the A-team that makes sense of these things we see in the ring every week on TV. It's Review-A-Wai for Monday night, download a Tuesday morning from the Fight Network site. It's Review-A-Wai for Monday night on USA Now on the John and Wai Take the Mic.
So Raw took place on Monday night from Louisiana in the Cajun Dome, but never once was it referred to by the city they were in, Wai. It was one of those nights.
Oh, what was the city?
Lafayette.
What's wrong with Lafayette?
Don't ask me. The only reference was it was written on Brock's t-shirt, but all night long, Michael Cole, including one time where he nearly said it, he always said, "We are here from Louisiana," or they would say the Cajun Dome, but never Lafayette, which I just found hilarious.
Interesting.
Yes, it was so noticeable on this show. And it's been in the past, too. This has been one of those cities where they don't name it for one of the weird reasons.
Yeah, okay, so it doesn't just have to do with the fact that WrestleMania is in a nearby Louisiana city. Does it sound too French?
Wait, you're trying to explain an insane OCD issue that I can't possibly give justification to what the reason is. It's too French. I have no idea.
Interesting. Okay.
Brock Lesnar and Paul Heyman came out, and Heyman said
By the way, let me just update you.
Oh.
We have new champions.
Oh, wow. The Golden State Warriors have done it.
Warriors 129 to 120.
Wow. It's all over for Cleveland. Just as I predicted, Wai.
Did you?
No, you picked the Warriors and I picked the Cavaliers a few weeks ago.
Yeah, okay.
So they'll meet again next year, I'm sure. So Lesnar and Heyman came out. Heyman said that he's here to have Brock unleash the beast. He says he showed respect to Samoa Joe, and yet Joe lured him into the water like a shark last week. They had no prior issues, but Brock has a problem now. And he talks about all the different Samoans that have been in the business. They're all related, and they're all proud of each other's accomplishments, except for Samoa Joe, who no one wants anything to do with, and calls Joe a punk and a dog. And his one big moment in his career was putting Paul Heyman in the coquina clutch. Heyman then described what it was like getting choked out by Joe, and when he woke up, he wondered what would happen if Brock Lesnar were to be choked out, and Lesnar laughed at this idea in the ring. Heyman then realized that's never going to happen because Joe is not man enough to choke Brock Lesnar. So Joe then interrupts, he gets into the ring, he stands face to face with Lesnar, and then they start brawling. Security runs down, and this was when... Were you having issues, too, with your screen? I think everyone was, because the screen was, like, just chopping out, and you were missing all of this. Mm-hmm. Lesnar nails the security. Joe takes down Lesnar, and then I was going to say the locker room emptied, but really it was everyone that's on standby most weeks for main event came out, and Joe got free, kicked Lesnar in the jaw. Lesnar chased him. They finally were separated. And this was the kickoff to Raw, and this was the last we would see of Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar on this show.
Mm-hmm. Brock had this, like, weird thing on his shoulder. It's like weird red thing.
Oh, I didn't notice this.
Mm-hmm.
What was it, like a cut, or was it something else?
No. It was a championship belt.
Oh, wow. I really walked into your joke there.
I'm just saying.
He actually came out, and it took me a second to remember he was the champion.
I feel like this was like, is this his first appearance or second appearance? Did he even appear the night after WrestleMania?
Yes, that was the last time he appeared.
Man, it was weird seeing this guy, and I needed to be reminded that he was almost champion because it was weird seeing him on Raw with the belt. Anyway, I thought this was awesome. I thought, for me, Paul's promos have been a little dull as of late, but I think tonight, with Brock by his side, hot off the angle from last week, I thought he sounded great. He was pissed off. He hit all his points, brought out great background on Samoa Joe, as, you know, he's the Samoan now who all the Samoans want nothing to do with. He's the Samoan outcast. And I thought that was awesome. I think that's a great way to differentiate Joe from all the other Samoans that have ever existed in the WWE. And then he created a great visual in the audience's minds of Joe putting that clutch on Brock, which I think everybody is dying to see now. So I thought Heyman was great. I love the pull apart. It's something they've done many times, but something I feel like they've only saved for big feuds. And I think it gives you an indication of how seriously they're taking Samoa Joe by positioning him here as an equal to Brock Lesnar.
I really liked what they did with the coquina clutch and making it this deadly submission that I almost hope they completely rip off the story of the one-winged angel in this match, where Joe can lose but never applies the coquina clutch to Brock Lesnar. And
it
that
could
should
work.
be the move that is ultimately protected here and is like the kryptonite for Brock Lesnar, this choke.
It could work, yeah. Do you think that Heyman should have sold the effects of that choke more as a result of from last week to this week?
I feel there could have been a bit more in terms of, he still had to cut the promo. How much could you really do other than if he couldn't talk?
Also, the thing is, it's a choke versus, like him getting beat up or like getting his arm broken or something. Chokes you can recover from and not really show any effects from, it felt it was realistic in that sense.
It's not as deadly as kendo stick shots, which can take you out for multiple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a good opening segment. I think this was the high point of Raw. And Brock is off next week, and then he'll be back 2 weeks from now. And we will see what they do because they still have a number of Brock appearances before the pay-per-view with Joe and where you go with this. I didn't think this had the chaotic nature that the Taker Brawl did, but I thought it served its purpose, and it was what you needed without going too overboard, because you still do have a couple more weeks. And had they done something like the Taker Brawl, to me, when they did that, there was no need to do anything beyond that year. And they continued to do stuff, and it was all forgotten because that was the one big impactful angle.
I agree. But in this case, though, I feel like you have a bit more to work with because you have Samoa Joe who can talk. Obviously, The Undertaker can speak, but I feel like his character is much more limited in what he can do. Right now, I feel like it's a bit more exciting because you have Joe playing this menacing heel, and in the weeks leading up to it, he could still continue to do all these crazy things, to follow up on that choking out Paul Heyman deal, which I hope they continue.
And I hope that they do a bit of the build-up, taking these guys out of just the environment of the show. Like, we get some kind of some background, some training stuff, like more to Joe's character as well, which they haven't done much with since he's been called up. This is an opportunity to really explain who this character is and why he's so dangerous, and build this up. And you can go the non-traditional route rather than, I don't want to see a contract signing with these two.
I would love to see Joe follow up on what Heyman mentioned as him being that Samoan outcast. And, obviously I think that it's something he can go deeper into once he faces off with a feud with Roman. But I think now is also the time when you can really explain this guy's background and explain his side of the story of why he is a Samoan outcast.
So after the break, the announcers recap the angle, and they emphasize the fact Joe is not afraid of Brock Lesnar. Then we went to Elias Samson, who was introduced. He was in the middle of the ring, said, "Hello, I'm Elias Samson," to a lot of boos. And he says that there's a lot of aggression in the air, and he wrote a song for the audience and tells them to keep their phones down and hold their applause, as he says Louisiana is a laughingstock, and insults the state, but of course him and Cole staying away from the city itself. And then we recapped Ambrose's attack on The Miz from last week during the celebration, and that led us to Elias Samson against Dean Ambrose.
Does he make a custom song for every town, including like house shows? Do you know?
I don't know what he does at the house shows, if he actually does a song.
There's quite a bit of effort put into these lyrics, and I actually find them quite entertaining, you know. They obviously, you know, they remind me of Cena's old rap promos. They're not to that level, but I do find them entertaining, and I think they are getting over with this crowd.
I don't even pay enough attention to the lyrics. Is there an actual rhyming scheme to these songs, or are they just...
Yeah.
Okay. So there is that he is putting into these.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say they're getting over because I still feel like his reactions right now are more like actual heel heat versus X-Pac heat, but it could change very quickly too. But what are your thoughts on his gimmick? Is he still somewhat entertaining to you, or do you think he's getting old?
I like the songs. I think that they're working. I think they're getting the right reaction. I just feel that when the match begins, he's very flat. And tonight he took on someone that to me is equally flat in Dean Ambrose. And that resulted in a match that was, I thought, really dull.
Yeah. One thing I really noticed, especially after watching a New Japan show versus a WWE show back to back, is...
Yes, compare Dominion to this match, please.
It's almost unfair, but I mean, I'm just kind of speaking about the matches in general on the shows. Is that in a WWE match, I think there's the rest holds are much more noticeable. Okay, I mean, in every match, I think you'll find rest holds, but for some reason, so many of the rest holds in the WWE look the same. They're all reverse chin locks where they're facing the camera directly, and they also look less like guys in painful submissions versus guys that just look like they're resting. And I think so much of the pacing of a typical WWE style match is now so recognized to its audience that a rest hold seems like a rest hold not just for the performers but for the audience as well. Like we know that nothing's going to go on right now. I can check my phone. You know, we know you're about to go to commercial. You know, we know nothing's going to happen at this point. So I feel like there needs to be a bit more evolution in your typical rest spots in the WWE style.
The audience started chanting, "You can't wrestle, you can't sing," at Samson. Ambrose then made a comeback to silence and then hit a suicide dive. And the best part was this concerned woman asking, "Are you okay?" as Ambrose was down on the floor in front of her. Ambrose then knocked Samson off the turnbuckle, and then Miz and Maurice came down to try and distract. Samson got a schoolboy for a 2 count. Ambrose got out of that, hit his lariat, and then chased the Miz on the floor. And then Ambrose, the count is running. He's on the floor. Maurice goes by, and I think she was supposed to trip him. She didn't, and then instead Ambrose just tripped over his own feet on the floor, beat the count, but in doing so took these double knees, and Samson hit the swinging neck breaker and pinned Dean Ambrose in 11 minutes and 52 seconds.
So you think Maurice was supposed to cause Ambrose to trip to lead into the finish?
Well, she came over in the opposite direction, and I thought that it...
See, but if she tripped Ambrose, how was Ambrose supposed to make it back into the ring?
I think it was supposed to be a tease that he was not going to make it in time, but he would.
Because he ran at Maurice almost at the count of 8 or 9, right before it.
Well, whatever it was, Ambrose looked like an idiot here, tripping over his own feet.
It did look awkward, yeah. And Samson wins.
Samson wins.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I saw this exact same finish with these same characters 3 weeks ago. So I actually went back and looked it up. And actually in that match, The Miz attacked Elias Samson to get Dean DQ'd.
Oh,
so this, I guess, was completely original, brand new, never been done before, this one.
If Dean Ambrose, Wai, started following you on Twitter, which he doesn't go on Twitter, so this would be a big change in his life, but change is what this man needs. And he sent you a direct message and said, "Hey, wow. Ting man, what do you think about my run? Any suggestions?" Would you reply to him, and what would you say to him?
Oh, well, that is a preposterous scenario. But if let's say a Dean Ambrose impersonator DM'd me, and I decided to play along.
If DM'd you.
Yeah. DA.
Oh, it's late. Leave me alone.
I think I would tell him that I don't think I would be telling him anything that he doesn't already know. You know what I mean? I feel like this man is talented enough to and more self-aware enough to know exactly what's wrong with what his character is right now and what's so stale about him right now. But I feel he's also probably limited by, you know, what he is written to be like. And I also
but like this match here, it's like when you are like, I feel it goes beyond. It's an easy thing to just talk about the character, how it's been scripted, where it's been taken. That's one thing, but it just seems like this guy, to me, when I think of a patterned match, he is the first guy that comes to mind right now.
Is that his fault, though?
Whose fault is it? Is it someone taking over his body during the match?
I mean, they have a certain expectation of what a match looks like. You know what I mean? Like if Dean Ambrose, what's his real name? You know, whatever. Jonathan Good got signed by New Japan and happened to be on Dominion. Do you think he'd wrestle a similar match? I don't.
No, but at the same time, Wade, like when you see a guy come out and have a great match, you can't just say, "Oh man, these agents, they really know what they're doing here." I mean, right. Some blame and some praise needs to be in the guy that is actually in there and doing the match. And there's a lot of things you can do to structure your match accordingly. I mean, there's only so much control in terms of the layout of a match. I mean,
so are you saying specifically in ring what he could be doing differently?
I'm looking at the whole package with him because I'm with you. Like I don't think Ambrose is a dumb guy. I've spoken to this guy and he's a lot to process when you are speaking with him, but I can tell that this guy has a lot of insight into character work, and I just don't know. I just feel he is so flat at the moment.
Yeah, personally, like. The match was very kind of just there, but it was also, I mean, I look at it like it was just a TV match, and it was a guy against a guy like Elias Samson, who I think is still relatively new, and I don't expect too much from him. But like I know Dean's gone out there before with a lot of top guys, like he's able to have great matches. So I feel like it's certainly within him. My biggest issues with him right now are just with his character, and I think this goofy thing, the kind of like weird guy, weird wacky dude that he plays all the time, doesn't work out for me, and I don't think works out for a lot of people of my certain demographic. The fact that they continue to choose to keep with it suggests that maybe they're targeting him towards a younger audience or maybe a different audience that does like him. But for me personally, it doesn't work. And I don't know. Maybe this is not enough for them to change it. But if I had my wish, I would turn him heel, and I would give him a much greater edge that I think the character is certainly capable of.
They ran a SmackDown ad for Tuesday night, and it's going to feature a 6-man tag with Styles, Nakamura, and Zayn against Corbin, Owens, and Ziggler, and a face-to-face between Jinder Mahal and Randy Orton. So this is the show in New Orleans that weeks ago they posted a story on the WWE website promoting that it would be Orton against Mahal in a title rematch, that it would be Nakamura against Ziggler, and I believe Owens and Styles. So it looks like none of those matches are happening that the WWE itself promoted on their website.
It's too bad, but they'll probably do Orton Mahal in the dark, right?
Yes, they'll probably do that as a dark match, but not as a title match. And nor should they do that before Sunday anyway.
Card subject to change.
Very subject to change. Mm-hmm. Then we had another Shattered Dreams video. This time Goldust quoted The Godfather Part 2, keep your friends close but your enemies closer, and that R-Truth was jealous and scared to go to him before he got to Goldust. Says no one ever understood him and asks if it's because he's too bizarre or he makes them feel uncomfortable. and says, ignorance can be beautiful, but just like beauty, nothing lasts forever, unless you're made of gold.
I still like this.
I like these videos too. I think he's doing great work here. And I'm actually interested in them eventually doing this R-Truth match.
I'm waiting for like the week that'll come where I'll just kind of like the nostalgia will run out and I'll be kind of like, seen it, done with it. But I'm still really into this. And I think like now in the current era, I have a much greater appreciation for how good this guy, Dustin Reynolds, is at playing this character, because I feel like this type of character work is something that seems a lot more rare these days, at least amongst the current roster. You know, somebody who knows his character so well and doesn't feel like he's even reading somebody else's words, you know? They could very well be his words or they could be written for him. I don't know. But I think his delivery just feels so natural. His pauses in between his words feel so natural that and unique to him that I just have to admire it.
That's why they call Dustin Rhodes the Natural.
That's it.
Kurt Angle. Let me ask you, how many weeks has Kurt worn this blue jacket with jeans? Has it been every week? Is this his uniform?
I haven't particularly noticed, but I believe so. I don't think he's always seemed to have worn a blazer, and jeans, I would assume, are probably his pant of choice.
Kurt tracks down The Miz and Maurice, and he's upset about the last segment, which, if he was upset about that, wait till you figured out what was in store. Miz said that Maurice is still upset about the whole grandfather clock deal from last week, and blames Kurt for leaving last week over his personal problems, which allowed Ambrose to come back into the arena. And Angle says, what do you know about my personal problems? And then Miz tells Angle to fire or suspend Dean Ambrose because of all of the actions that he's responsible for. Kurt says he's not going to do anything about Ambrose and tells Miz, you go do something about it.
So, isn't that exactly what Miz was doing by interfering in Dean's match? He was trying to stop Dean Ambrose himself. So what But what was Kurt trying to achieve here? What did Kurt achieve here? He came, tried to ask the Miz, what were you doing out there? And then at the end he said, well, you know what? You should take care of this Dean Ambrose thing yourself. Which is what the Miz has been doing and will probably continue to do. So I don't know exactly what was the point of Kurt's role here. There was one brief mention of his ongoing storyline with the text, and that was just a bit of a throwaway line in this segment. Beyond that,
I don't think they had any ideas this week of where they're moving it forward. But you take that story away, this Kurt character is just... like, how useless.
Well, he's just there. And again, like, I personally feel like a GM shouldn't necessarily always be a leading role, you know? Sometimes
I didn't think I would say this, but I contrast him to Shane McMahon, and I don't find Shane to be overwhelming on the SmackDown show, but he feels like he has a role, he has his place, and to me, way more of an effective character than this Kurt Angle guy is.
Right. He seems like somebody who is more hands-on, at least in storyline, than Kurt.
He doesn't overshadow the show either.
Right. Yeah, maybe something to that. But maybe you know, Kurt is supposed to kind of play a guy who is having trouble keeping up with his job. You know, always getting distracted with whatever's going on, leaving the show midway through. Perhaps it's all to lead to something.
Then they did this feature on Cedric Alexander, and it cuts to Noam Dar, who's on the phone. Alexander walks in to repeat that he's moving on. And then we find out Alicia Fox is on FaceTime with Noam Dar and tells Alexander, why don't you say all this to my face? And she's recovering from a neck injury, and Alexander says, this ends tonight. This poor guy, he just can't move on.
Yeah, like here was even prompted. Like he just walked in on Dar's conversation with Fox and said,
"Yeah, they didn't
done."
They didn't bother to explain like maybe Dar set this match up or anything like that. It was just assumed we're having a match, and Cedric was upset at Dar for this.
Yeah. So I mean, I take it that they're trying to push Cedric as a result of all this, but none of the focus is ever put on him. It's really all put on Dar and Fox. Even the video they played before this, it was just a video of a bunch of his random flashy moves. There's nothing about his character at all. You know, I don't know a thing about this guy's background, what motivates him. I don't know anything. I just know that he used to date Alicia Fox, and now he doesn't want to date Alicia Fox.
Yeah, she left him for another guy.
So they're not just giving me that much to cheer for.
So Fox is still on the phone with Dar as he makes his entrance, and he has been able to hook his phone up to the Titantron so we can all hear Alicia Fox, and she doesn't want to end the call. So the match has to begin with Fox yelling over the speakers in the entire arena. Yeah. And Dar turns around and is immediately hit with the lumbar check and loses in 7 seconds.
Yeah, this was the same Tyler Breeze intro.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought it was actually a pretty great idea. And I almost wish there was a longer match so that we could hear Fox coach him via, like, being this big face on the Titantron throughout the entire match. I think that would have been really funny. But
you're curious now? Believe me, they will do that.
Oh, yeah.
You will take that back.
Well, the thing is, I think there's potential in something like that as a comedy bit, but I think this segment and maybe future segments, I think needs a bit more of a punchline to really kind of like get the audience to laugh or to do something to give it a point. It just kind of ended here with a big move, and I still think there's potential, but
it would get a great reaction if she's just constantly yelling and you do it for like 2 minutes and then Cedric comes over and hangs up on her.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Or another woman calls Dar and we see it on the screen and Noam is seeing another woman behind Alicia's back. And it's right there on the big screen as she's calling.
That would be interesting. Maybe I take it back. There's no potential.
I was going to say something about Bray Wyatt, but I don't think I will. He's not having not a good day.
No. Well, we can talk about Bray Wyatt right now.
Yeah, we can. First, they showed highlights of Roman Reigns, and next week he's going to make an announcement about his SummerSlam plans. I imagine he's planning to attend. Maybe he's going to let us know where he's going to be staying, what his events are going to be for the week. Lots to find out next week. But not on this show at all. He was kept off, as was Seth Rollins. No, he wasn't. Seth was on this show, but Reigns was not.
Oh, yeah.
I completely blanked on Seth and his role. It's Finn Balor I'm thinking about. He was not on the show.
He's been off for 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, Finn was gone again. And, yeah, I mean, maybe, like, what would you see for an idea for Reigns? Because next week, it almost feels like you have to kind of get him onto that July pay-per-view, don't you?
Doesn't it make sense to put those two together? Everybody else.
That's what I'm thinking. Maybe that's what they're waiting for.
Right. Yeah.
And they just they didn't have anything for either this week, and why waste that now when this was going to be a show that was definitely going to be hit by the NBA game? Just hold off that another week.
So Balor was in Japan?
Balor was doing promotional stuff in Japan. I don't know if he's back yet or not.
Right.
He was hanging out with Okada, with the Gorillas of Destiny, with Kushida. He was having a great time.
Yeah.
Bray is then on the screen, and he said the world is ending from its own sin, and he's the only one who can save you. He blows out his light, and then we get the graphics. Do you notice that these graphics still include Randy Orton in them?
Oh, sorry. Which graphics are you talking about?
You know, when he finishes the promo and it does the like lights out, you see the black and white.
Yeah, the little flash thing.
Yes, his signature.
You know, I wasn't aware, but yeah, I guess that's something they could fix. You're right. Like,
please don't tell me that's a tease of something down the road.
It's certainly not. I would just say it's an oversight. But are you saying like this was like Randy Orton as part of the Wyatt family footage?
It was just shots of Randy, and at the end of it, it was like separate shots too. It wasn't just one.
Okay. I didn't know
weird.
that. And how did you catch this just by watching it?
I saw him, and then I went back and rewound it, and yeah, it was like multiple shots of Randy at the end of this promo.
Normally I would say like, does it matter? But I knowing how the attention to detail they put into every single bit of their production, I'm sure this is just an oversight that they will probably fix once it's pointed out to them.
So then he comes out to do another promo in the middle of the ring. He says those who deny him will be judged, and mentions Seth Rollins and how he thinks he has all the answers, but he lives in a glass house where the blueprints of the architect block out the sun. And one dose of Bray's truth and Rollins' precious house will come crumbling down.
Oh, God. My dream interaction is for Bray Wyatt and TJP to have a promo battle.
Oh, my God.
And to have you recap every word. Because you do a great job of it all. Man, like, I thought Bray was, Bray lost me totally this week. I mean, it took me a second.
There is no one more hot and cold on this guy than you. Well, I never know what you're going to like with this guy and what you're going to not like.
I'll tell you, sometimes I try to make a real effort to listen to his words and to hear what he's saying. And I tried to make a similar effort here. And that's also saying it's also nobody should have to make an effort, really to listen to a guy's promo to decipher it. But this week I tried to do that, and it still took me a second to realize, this was supposed to be his explanation for interfering with the Seth Rollins match last week in the main event. It was to me, sounded like a rather generic promo, dressed up with biblical English. That's all these are. And yeah, it was a big problem. And unfortunately, Rollins here has to come out to play against that Bray Wyatt. And Seth isn't great at cutting promos that connect with the audience either. So Seth Rollins having to respond to a Bray Wyatt biblical promo. Both of them, I think, had difficulty here capturing the crowd.
Are you saying that you two were removing shards of glass from your soul for eternity? Which is what Seth is going to have to do once his house comes crumbling down from Bray's truth?
Oh, man.
Bray ended it by stating, "If you take my name in vain, you will fall."
Uh-huh.
Seth then came out. And Rollins can't believe that this is all over Seth calling him names, and says that what I said wasn't blasphemy, but the truth. Bray drinks too much of his own Kool-Aid, which I'm so tired of this line, just in general. Drinking his own Kool-Aid.
So this was in reference to the promo Seth cut at the start of Raw last week, right?
Sure.
Where Seth basically ran down everybody that was involved in the five-way, and that's why Bray attacked him. Just so that we can clarify what this feud is about.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So he called him some names, and Bray has now singled out Seth of all of them.
Yeah.
The lights went out. They come back up. Bray's now gone, and he's back on the screen. And he says Seth may have slayed a king, but he is a god that lives forever, and he cackles to end this segment.
Yeah, I thought this sucked. I think it just highlighted what is not working with the Bray Wyatt character, and that's the real inability to relate to what he's saying. Even when you figure out what he's saying, he's not saying much. There is no meat to this feud at all. He called me names. Now I want to beat him. It sucks. And Seth is not the guy to drag that relatability out of Bray Wyatt. So I thought this feud was off to a bad start. Even the fucking lights out, lights on gimmick is just goofy. Come on, in 2016? Oh, how did he disappear? Oh, he's on the screen now. How did he vanish? I don't know. It's like,
if he can do that, oh my God.
Come on, give us a bit more credit, And I realize, this is not the easiest type of character to, do this type of shit for. on a live TV setting.
But this is a character they way overthink. They really think that they have this state-of-the-art pro wrestling heel that's so far ahead of the curve, and it's overthought to death. And that's evidence. I mean, he's been on the main roster for over 4 years now.
I would just I think he sounds cool when he's talking, but I would have him talk a lot less and have him do a lot more physical, anyway.
You live in a glass house, and the blueprints of the architect prevent the sun from coming in.
Oh, God.
Yes, because Seth literally built his own house, the architect. Mm-hmm. Charlie reacts to the ominous words that we just heard and then welcomes in the Hardys. Matt says it's a daunting task tonight. Cesaro and Sheamus are the most physical team that they have ever faced, and Jeff brings up the fact he lost a tooth as evidence of that. And then they did this deal where Matt would start the sentence and Jeff would finish it for them. Like they're soulmates.
Yeah.
I hope that they just were trying something different here, and this is not a new pattern that we're going to see from the Hardys, because this felt so weird.
They're like twins that finish each other's sentences.
Yeah. Like this was just something out of like a crappy sitcom.
Maybe it's a new gimmick.
Great.
Yeah. What did you think of did you watch the whole interview with Graves?
Yes, I did. It was up on the network today. And I mean, I can't say there was too much to digest from it. I mean, they said what you would assume they would say.
What I took from it was to me, this was kind of their first real acknowledgement that there's a line between the characters they're playing now and the broken characters. Because I feel like they're, for weeks after their debuts, Matt has been throwing little bits of, the broken Matt into his promos, saying delightful occasionally. But in this interview, Graves asked him, what was it like to step back into your old Matt Hardy character? And Matt said straight up, it was
really hard
to play that version 1 Team Extreme Matt. And he said how he felt a lot of the broken Matt mannerisms were now a part of him. Could just be also clever maneuvering in a public setting, like if they're a part of me, then they're not intellectual property. It's just a part of who I am. So but in this promo with Charlie tonight, he definitely felt like a straight up Matt Hardy.
Yeah, and I mean in this interview, you can really read between the lines that they know these characters they're playing now have a shelf life, and they're characters from another generation. They realize that.
Essentially, they came out and said the characters we're playing now aren't that great, and that what's to come once we deal with all our legal issues will be way better.
Yeah, kind of like that was kind of the most interesting part of the interview. So I don't know if there's more to that. They did mention on the interview that they're doing a 24 documentary on them, but it's not coming out till next year. So quite the wait.
Okay.
Then they plugged that free agent John Cena returns to SmackDown on July 4th.
What does that mean?
That means our Raw numbers are really getting hit hard, and John Cena's probably going to be on both brands this summer. Okay,
so I mean, this was the first I heard of that. So he was not part of the draft, quote unquote.
No.
I didn't even know there were free agents.
Well, this is called creative maneuvering when you want your big star to prop up both numbers. I mean, it's been pretty evident that since Cena has left, I mean, SmackDown, I mean, is typically doing 2.3 million viewers every week. They were doing a bit higher with Cena, but it's not notable. But I mean, from just the especially for their attendance at SmackDown events, I think you've definitely seen a bit of a dip without Cena. And I mean, the Raw number has been just year over year. It's taken a massive drop that I feel they want Cena on both shows rather than just one. And that's I don't know what his schedule's like when he's coming back, if he's back full time for the entire summer, for into the fall. But I think this is going to mean that if there's a week they want him on Raw, if there's a week they want him on SmackDown, or at least play that out for at least a couple weeks where he's this free agent and can show up wherever he wants before they have him commit to one show. But I mean, if there's one guy you want going back and forth, it's probably him.
Do you think this could potentially lead to more of these free agents, quote unquote, that will essentially kind of start poking holes into this brand split?
I mean, I really feel that they are. I don't know, because now we're almost a year into this brand split, and the immediate reaction. I mean, last year they were able to add those house shows on Monday nights, so there's definitely been a positive to the brand split, and the fact that they were able to largely maintain their audiences on both shows. They were able to boost SmackDown as a result. But now they're a year into this. How committed are they to both of these shows? I mean, it wasn't this saving grace for SmackDown where they raised it so that's the same amount of audience as Raw. It's still below. It's still the number 2 show. This is at a time when, your roster is, I don't know, maybe.
How does SmackDown ratings compare from pre-brand split to this moment?
It's higher since that they had the combination of when they moved it to Tuesday nights and it was going live. It got a bit of a bump from that. And then also with the brand split, it was, it's typically doing in the 2.3 million range. They've done above that.
Considering how much lower Raw has dipped, do you think that is, a greater sign of success for SmackDown, that not only have they've been able to maintain, but increased?
I don't know how much of it is, I think with Raw, I'll put it this way. I feel that splitting the rosters, it's prevented people from making SmackDown the skippable show. Because if you go back and you're throwing out these on a pay-per-view week where you have that on Sunday night and then you have Monday and Tuesday with the same rosters, I feel SmackDown would be getting hit significantly.
Right.
By being at the end of that and not its own unique show with unique performers on it, that I think SmackDown would be much lower had they not done the brand split.
But at the same time, with the addition of there being, SmackDown being more important, you're also a bar to be a WWE fan and to keep up with all the storylines is raised by another 2 hours compared to, maybe just all the time you wanted to devote to it was a 3-hour Raw once a week. Now you have to watch essentially 5 hours if you want to keep up with all of WWE's programming. So perhaps that's limiting newer fans from coming into it, but it's relying on your hardcore fans to spend more time.
Yeah, and that's been their approach. I mean, whenever you hear these conference calls or when George Barrios does these speeches, their new buzzword is supersize and super serve the fans. And it's all about just more. That's their whole thinking now. And it's having that effect where, yes, you're getting, I think your dedicated fan base, they will support you and they'll spend tons of money to do so and travel to these shows and they never miss an event. But I think each year you're getting less and less of those fans and you're down to such a core group now that, I mean, we've talked about it many times. The idea of a new fan jumping on board and following this is just daunting. I couldn't imagine someone just starting from scratch now to become a WWE fan that could possibly follow the product that it requires. And that's why you're getting a lot of even regular viewers of WWE that I feel they cherry pick segments on Raw. They have other means to follow the product without having to watch all of this. And I know people that has taken some damage to the number. It's too much for people.
I know people that cover pro wrestling that don't watch all the stuff that is out there. And I don't blame them. There's just so much of it. And you can't keep up without watching everything.
So John Cena's back July the 4th, and we will see what his plans are. Kalisto and Apollo Crews. This was something. Titus O'Neil was able to set up Akira Tozawa with a front row seat at the show his company produces where he works for.
Yeah, wow, what a get.
Yeah.
Some guys can just pull up a chair and sit ringside or just peek from the back, but he got Tozawa to get dressed up to sit front row.
You know, Wai, I did a similar thing. I've set up a Dropbox account where once we're done recording the show, before I post it online, I'm going to send you a private link to our show.
Oh, thanks.
So you can hear it first.
Do I get it in stereophonic sound?
It might be mono tonight.
Oh, okay.
So this was the match where Cole welcomed, if you're tuning in, welcome to the Cajun Dome in Louisiana. He caught himself. There was a springboard Hurricane Rana by Kalisto. Then Apollo caught him off of a handspring off the ropes into a spinning powerbomb and pinned Kalisto in 2:16. Treated him like garbage.
Kalisto.
Yes.
Well, yeah, he's not really the focus here. Afterwards, Cruz drags Tozawa into the ring, and they hold his arm up, and Tozawa looks like he doesn't know what's going on. I don't really know what this is turning into. I'm also confused. Are they heels?
They don't come across as heels. I mean, it seems like this guy's really he's trying to do a favor for this guy.
He does
Apollo seems happy.
Yeah.
I have no reason to dislike Apollo Crews. They've given me no reason to hate this guy, and he endorses Titus.
So Cruz is like the toughest character to read in all this. I have no idea what he thinks in this whole thing. Does he like being a part of the Titus brand or not? Some weeks he's incredibly reluctant. Other weeks he seems to be all in, like this week, you know? Okay, I'm guessing now at this moment he's all in on the Titus brand. He likes being a part of it. He wants to drag Tozawa into it. Tozawa looks reluctant, doesn't know what's going on, but seems to be playing along anyway. So Tozawa for sure is a babyface. I would assume Cruz is a babyface too, even though he fought Kalisto on this show. Now, do you think that Tozawa actually ends up being a part of this Titus thing, and that he will, I guess, team with Cruz, or at least be a part of a stable with Cruz and Titus? Or is Tozawa ultimately going to break out?
I could have sworn I just spent 3 months of Akira Tozawa telling us he doesn't need any kind of mentor or help.
Yeah.
So why would he suddenly need this assistance from Titus O'Neil?
I'm not sure.
He seems very independent. That's all I know about this guy after 3 months.
I will say I think Titus is very funny. I think a lot of his .com stuff is actually really good, and I think shows more of the character's personality. Like, they continued to do the press conference deal last week with Cruz, on .com, where it was just Charlie in the audience. It was okay. It wasn't like laugh out loud funny, but I think he's amusing in the role. I just have no idea where it's going, and I'm not sure how to read the people involved.
Rhino and Heath Slater were backstage eating crackers when The Miz and Maurice walked up with an opportunity. They said they were champions on SmackDown, but Kurt Angle's done nothing with them here on Raw. And he wants Slater to join his entourage to make him a star, just like he did in the Marine 5. Slater says when he was a kid, he wanted to become the Intercontinental Champion. Miz says, if you join me, you'll get a title shot someday. That's all I need, is one more WWE storyline where the heel has promised his heavy a future title shot, because this would be the third example of this going.
Yeah, it would be.
He says if he joins him, and Rhino interjects here, saying he already has a partner, and then stuffs his face full of the crackers and yells at him with his mouth full.
Yeah.
I nearly just deleted this from my DVR and gave up on this show.
Oh,
this was so disgusting.
Is this your biggest pet peeve?
It's the biggest.
Wow.
This was gross.
I think it's pretty gross when people pee with the door open. I hate that.
Where? Or just in
like
any
in a house
kind of bathroom setting?
Yeah.
Who does that?
Well, I've not you, but I've roomed with people on trips who do that. Like, sometimes guys are just together, and then Some like a guy will just have to like go, or you know, like if you're amongst like close friends and you're all dudes, you're just like, oh, I gotta take a piss, and they'll just like leave the door open. It's fine. I hate the sound of like water dripping, and like and it bugs me. So if Rhino did that on this segment, just started to take a piss with the door open.
If he had a mouthful and just started urinating, you and I will both agree we're done with this show.
We'd be on the same page, yeah.
Alexa Bliss came out for a promo. There was a sign in the front row from this woman that read, "Hey Ambrose, I just got dumped. Make me a happy girl."
He could. Maybe. Anyway, we didn't even talk about the Bray Wyatt thing. Do you want to?
Sure. Why? Did this make you think of it?
Well, I mean, maybe she should have targeted the sign to Bray instead of Dean Ambrose. Oh. Should we talk about this stuff? Is this like personal? Like, is it worth mentioning?
I mean, it's a public story.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the kind of stuff that I hate talking about wrestlers' personal stuff, but it is a public story. I mean, he's going through a divorce. His wife has now filed suit with Bray and
for alleged adultery with Bray, allegedly to have been having an affair with JoJo, the ring announcer.
Yes. So I mean, it's unfortunate, but I mean, it's a public story, so it's out there. People are aware of it, and it's now out there for everybody to consume. And I mean, in a lot of instances, WWE will do kind of the opposite of ignoring it. They somehow, in some weird way, incorporate it. I don't know if you really can with Bray Wyatt. I guess you could. But, I mean, in the past, the WWE runs towards this stuff and makes it part of the program.
Maybe we'll start. Well, maybe we'll start getting ring announcements from Sister Abigail. I do not see JoJo playing Sister Abigail, but although they could dress her up, like man,
could you imagine Bray and JoJo on Total Divas? Did you hear Renee's off the show?
I read your update. Yes, I saw that.
Which I assume means Dean as well, and also, I mean,
I would assume
Eva Marie's done. Do you like the idea of Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax being added?
I think Nia is a good addition. I think Alexa will probably be as well. But, you know, they've been very careful not to push their quote-unquote kind of like serious main event level women's talent on Total Divas, almost as if they feel like it's a downgrade for them. And I would consider Alexa to be a part of that caliber. But it feels like they're comfortable enough with it. I mean, do you think there's any deeper reason why like none of the four horsewomen have been on Total Divas?
That's a good question. I don't know. Of all the women, you would think that, I mean, those are their biggest stars in the division. Right. You would think that they would want them on there.
Yeah, but I guess I would assume that they wouldn't want them. You know, the four of them are, I think, the ones that are leading your quote unquote women's revolution, and I assume they wouldn't want them to be labeled as divas for fear of any backlash towards that label, perhaps. But I guess with Alexa, they don't mind as much.
This will probably also get now Buddy Murphy onto Total Divas with Alexa.
We'll see. I mean, not all of them have their significant others on the show, but I could see that.
So Bliss says she doesn't have to defend her title tonight, unlike last week when she had to against Nia. And she mentions the women's Money in the Bank match, but then just moves on. It was almost like she had to say this, but had no point about this match other than it's happening on Sunday. And she's here to grace everyone with her presence. So Nia comes out and says that she was promised a title match. Bliss says she wanted to have a classic match with her that people would go back and watch. But that moment was stolen by Dana and Mickie James and shouldn't be held accountable for their actions. So James and Brooke comes out. Cole informs us that Mickie is on the left and Dana is on the right. Which is helpful for me. Yes. I'm always confusing Mickie James with Dana Brooke. James says she's a 6-time champion and Bliss has a long way to go before she reaches her territory, and Bliss calls it unfair that she brings up Bliss calling it unfair last week. So Nia never watched this segment last week on Raw that we all got to see. So Nia got to learn about what Bliss said behind her back on national television. Bliss then says that Brooke is a disgruntled worker, and James feels the spotlight is fading by the second. This led to Emma's return, who got into the ring to announce she is back, and referred to Alexa as Miss Bliss. Then Sasha came out, got a fairly big reaction. They were chanting to the point that Sasha had to tell them to keep quiet, I'm talking. And all of them want their shot at Alexa, and ends up with everyone brawling. And we went to a break, came back with a 6-woman tag, but got all of the women here out with the exception of Bayley, who had her own segment later, which we'll need some time to digest.
I felt bad for Emma in this segment, who she got injured several weeks back. I thought anytime you get injured, it sucks, but the silver lining is that you can return to maybe more of a refreshed kind of state. Here, she came back. She said, I'm back. And then she was immediately tossed aside again, back to irrelevancy on this roster. Clearly no intention of carrying her relationship with Dana Brooke. And I don't know if there's much of an intent to do anything with her, judging by the way she was treated in this match.
Yeah, well, I guess they kind of exhausted the vignettes on Emma, that they couldn't have gone back to those.
See, but vignettes aside, I feel like she could have come out here and been treated like a bigger deal, at least spoke about, what's been going on.
She wasn't even the focus of the reveals. I mean, this was built to Sasha coming out.
Yeah, like she had no statement about where she's been, what her character is all about. Nothing.
Like, really, she probably... Well, SmackDown's kind of full with their own women.
Listen,
I can't see Emma being in a significantly better spot there either.
I look at this 6-women's tag, and then I was almost shocked at how weak the Raw women's division has suddenly gotten. And I'm wondering, has Charlotte made that big of a difference? The fact that Charlotte moved? But it's not just that. It's also the lack of creative for people like Mickie, for people like Dana, and even for people like Nia compared to the SmackDown roster. That really highlights the difference in quality of the two divisions right now.
I would say across the board, with the exception of Alexa Bliss, every female on Raw is less over than they were 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alexa's the only one they have done anything with, and she was well on her way to that on SmackDown. I don't think she's been given more on Raw, that's definite. But I don't think it's leaps and bounds above what she was doing on SmackDown.
I don't think so. I mean, she didn't do what was considered one of the worst segments of all time during her time on SmackDown.
Then the announcers plugged Money in the Bank, which made me wonder why would the brands have any kind of battle over John Cena? Like, are they these warring promotions, or do they want to help each other out? If so, why not share John Cena?
Well, I mean, how I figure how I make sense of it in my head is that this was all a mandate from corporate to promote. They had to read this. You know what I mean? That's how I justify it in storyline.
All right. They had a Finn Balor video package with some clips from fans, just to remind us he still works here. And then we had the sit-down interview with Corey Graves and Bayley. This is not going to turn into a documentary. If it is, it will be called The Fall of Bayley, and will be plenty of footage coming out of this. She's asked about her kendo stick match, and said she had never been in a match like that, and she reacted like most people would. She's not here to deliver bruises or send people to the hospital. She's here to put smiles on people's faces, and says she is going to be 100% her. She's not going to change who she is. She's just going to be Bayley, and still wants to be the best. She wants to regain that title and go into WrestleMania next year as champion. And then the interview ends, and Bayley asks Corey, "Can we end this with a hug?" And Corey just looks and leans in, and they hug. And Bayley asks, "How did that feel?" And Corey says he needs a cigarette. What in the fuck was this way? This was creepy.
I thought this made Bayley come across like a delusional, insane person. So here she's asked about her inability to really come out of her shell and take advantage of this hardcore match in this Extreme Rules kendo match. And I found her explanation to be almost seem like she was twisting her failure as some sign of triumph, that she didn't give in to temptation and instead took a beating and lost. But if you look at the rest of the storyline, that's really not how any of this was positioned. You know, she requested the kendo stick match to test herself, to see if she could break out of her shell to, become somebody that she is not necessarily comfortable being, but yet she knows she needs to be in order to be a champion. She restates her goal of wanting to become a women's champion, to be the best, but doesn't state that because she failed here, it takes her further away from it. She just instead tries to frame this like she succeeded, which I think are the thoughts of a delusional, insane person. And then they end it by showing that she's got this weird obsession with hugging everybody. This person's a freak.
It's just amazing what they have done with this character. And just, I had the same conclusion at the end of this. Like, they're pushing her to be this unstable.
Yeah, because you had Graves react to it like he was weirded out, and I think maybe the idea could be to show that Graves is this guy who, he's a heel commentator who shouldn't enjoy being hugged. Yet I thought it just made Bayley look weird.
Well, that's a sexual line, and that's just, it was very weird. Like, very strange.
It's clearly, like, the tone of this, I think...
like, Bayley is not a sexual character at all.
Yeah.
And how they are just totally fucking up this character is astounding.
Yeah.
And this is where we're at, where I just feel if they're going down this road, wow.
Well, it's certainly, this was not helpful. And certainly... in no way did I feel like it rehabbed her character at all. Instead, I mean, if you're going to talk about a character, a babyface who failed, she should be confronting her failures head on, saying, I couldn't embrace my dark side, and I let everybody down, and I'll need to improve on this in the future. But instead, it was almost like she was ignoring her failure, and as a result, not growing as a result of that failure. So. I was not a fan of this. I strongly wonder if she was originally booked to win that match, because none of this outcome makes any sense if you think of that whole story as a whole. From her being whipped by the kendo stick, to her requesting the match, to her teasing using the kendo stick and not using it, it all should have led to her using the stick to defeat Alexa, or at least being able to use the stick to get a few good whips on Alexa before even ultimately losing. But seeing the follow-up here, like, further confuses me what they were trying to achieve with that whole story.
Then we had The Miz and a mystery partner taking on Heath Slater and Rhino. So Rhino and Slater are out. The Miz comes out with Maurice, and his partner, who enters, is dressed as a bear, riding a tricycle down the ramp as the crowd chants "Bear," and then chanted "We want Bear" as the match begins. And this became a forum for Vince McMahon to get all of his bear puns out through Michael Cole, and that's what this match became. A pun-off.
You must have loved it.
The Bear tags himself in and, of course, applies a bear hug. Cole calls the tag barely legal when he tags in and then calls the match unbearable. Miz then attacks the Bear, runs it into the barricade. The Bear returns and hits the dirty deeds to Slater behind the Miz, and then Maurice is warning him. He turns around and unmasks as Dean Ambrose, and Miz runs into the ropes, knocking Maurice off the apron. Miz gets hit with the dirty deeds, and then Ambrose places Slater on top of the Miz to get the win in 6:28 and puts the Bear's mask on the Miz.
I'll tell you what. I just came up with a great idea to sell 1 million network subscriptions, okay? If they want me, everybody listening to this, to subscribe, pay their $9.99 a month to this network, all they have to do is offer a second screen experience with a camera on Vince McMahon during Raw, where I can see his reaction to segments like these as they go on, because I'm sure they are wildly entertaining to see Vince laugh his ass off at a segment like this. I think it would be hilarious. I thought, last week's segment was wildly successful, I thought. And I think this was their attempt to follow up on it. It was not as good this week. But, I thought it wasn't meant to be. It's hard to take seriously, but last week's segment was not serious. And so I think this was just, another attempt to follow up on that tone of a segment. I didn't hate it, but it was not as successful of a follow-up.
Yeah, I just thought this was just off the rails at a certain part, and I would love to have that second screen experience, because after watching the end of that Bayley interview and then this, I just come to the conclusion that the person that's unstable is the guy that is putting this together, that is just so entertained by this stuff. And it's an overall tone of this entire show that I feel, what is the thing that people are most into? And it was the first 10 minutes of the show. And then the rest of the show was this. It was the crazy girlfriend on FaceTime. It's a fucking bear on a tricycle. It's a Bayley hugging a guy who's getting off on hugs. This was the show.
I mean, there are good parts. There are bad parts to every show. It's a long show. Those are certainly some of the lowlights of the show. But it's a long show. You're going to get kind of a wide range, I suppose, of good to bad stuff. The thing is, like, last week, though, that segment could have very well, like with The Miz and Ambrose, I think that segment could have very well gone awfully as well. But yet, I think we all loved it. And that was written by the same people. That was all produced by the exact same people. So, some weeks it's a hit, some weeks it's a miss. This was, I wouldn't even say it was a complete miss. It was just like a bear is kind of visually entertaining to see. I thought the crowd liked it, but it carried the feud along. Wasn't disastrous, I thought.
And probably leads to The Miz and Slater for the title.
Yeah.
For Raw maybe next week.
Yeah, for Raw.
Not a pay-per-view.
For Raw. I mean, it seems like Ambrose is still the guy.
And Heath is now the new James Ellsworth.
The guy who just gets knocked out and covers guys.
Dean comes and helps maybe.
He kind of always was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Rhino's just forgotten.
Yeah.
Or we could get the Rhino versus the Bear.
Uh-huh. Or a team. Yep.
All great things to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
Neville and Rich Swann were supposed to have a match, and at the beginning, Michael Cole said that Neville's next title defense will be at Great Balls of Fire, but never said against who. Neville attacks Swann from behind and takes Swann to the floor, puts him back in the ring, and applies the Rings of Saturn, and Neville just names off Austin Aries, who was off again this week, but was at the live events over the weekend, TJP, and now Richard Swann. and tells him to get out of his ring. It feels good to be the king, and then mentions Akira Tozawa and tells him to tread carefully unless he wants to kneel down to the king. So this suggests that that's the match at Great Balls of Fire, although Tozawa's in like two different storylines, it seems.
Well, I assume that would play into this, right? Titus will be in Tozawa's corner against Neville, which...
Maybe Titus was the one who negotiated the title match for him.
I think Neville, that's what Neville was making reference to, was a tweet from Titus.
Okay, they never showed this tweet. You're right. They mentioned
Yeah. My concern, though, is that, well, clearly at this point, Neville is running out of competitors. He already had a 3-month feud with Austin Aries, and now there's no one else. I would think I was a fan of Aries getting the title for this specific reason, because there's really nobody else for Neville to face. The closest one is Tozawa, but even Tozawa, I feel, is not ready, having spent his only feud thus far against Brian Kendrick in what was, I think, a less than stellar feud. Now he's involved in a comedy angle with Titus O'Neil. So I can't expect this match to be anything but sort of a comedy backdrop to what he's got going on with Titus, which is unfortunate because I think Tozawa is somebody that you can really spend time on to build as a serious potential champion of the division. And, you know, my concern, again, is just that they're burning through these challengers way too quickly. Gallagher versus Neville should have been a bigger match. Could have been a longer feud, but they just used it up in 1 month ahead of WrestleMania and just kind of threw Gallagher away, not to be seen again. So I worry Tozawa will get a similar treatment.
Charlie was then with Sheamus and Cesaro, and Cesaro pulls out the Hardys' autobiography from 2003, Exist to Inspire. And Sheamus says that back then they inspired kids to wear pantyhose on their arms, and tonight they're going to inspire them to write the sequel, Exist to Retire. I kind of enjoyed this.
Have you ever read the book?
I have the book.
Oh, how is it?
I read it in 2003.
I wonder, how much of the audience was even born when this book came out.
Oh, come on. That was it was 14
years ago. There are definitely a bunch of people.
It's a bit.
There are a bunch of people watching that are younger than that.
I remember reading that book. It's not, it's done like it's just quotes from both, just going back and forth.
Like an interview?
Yeah, kind of.
Like a transcribed interview.
It's a transcript, yes.
Okay. That's an interesting way of doing an autobiography, especially if you're...
I thought it worked for that book. It was definitely different.
Especially if you're not a writer.
Yeah, it's probably, I would imagine, putting that together was a lot easier as well, rather than having a whole narrative to it.
I certainly think there's a market for an updated version of that, or a sequel to it.
Exist to Inspire 2.
Yeah. By the way, you failed to mention that Exist to Inspire is written with the number 2, of course.
The number 2, yes.
Was Exist, X-I-S-T?
Oh, you know what? I think it was spelt normally, but I'm going to look it up. Okay. Exist to Inspire.
No, it was
I wonder what this is going for on Amazon.
It was an E.
Damn.
God,
yeah.
I'll tell you, though, what the biggest sin to the English language is that was committed by a Hardy boy.
Per Oxygen?
Yes. Per Ox Wai Ting, the name of Jeff Hardy's band.
You can't even spell it. You've got to use the question mark in there.
Jesus Christ. I heard his explanation of why he named this band what it is on Jericho's podcast, and just it did not excuse it anymore. Per Ox Why? W-H-Y question mark.
You can learn more at peroxygenrocks.com, which forwards you to jeffhardybrand.com.
Sorry, continue.
I was trying to look up some peroxygen songs here that we could share.
It's not peroxygen.
Do you want to hear some of these?
No, don't. Let's not. The music, I'm sure, is fine. Okay, whatever. I have nothing to say about the music. I've never even heard his band. But the name is fucking awful.
The names of the songs actually aren't all that weird. The weirdest is physical else as one word. Anyway. Back to the program.
I think some of the
Carl
songs,
Anderson and Luke Gallows were out.
Some of the songs are cool. Didn't he help come up with the Broken Hardy's theme? Wasn't that him?
Yes, I think so.
I think that song's awesome.
Well, the song's called Obsolete, so yeah.
It's on the Pollock Wai Ting album, Within the Cygnus Rift.
Within the Cygnus Rift.
Yeah.
Big Cass and Enzo were scheduled to come out for their tag match when we cut to the back, and Cass has been taken out again. Enzo races over as the officials are checking on him, and Cass says he took one shot to the back of the head, and it was the hardest he has ever been hit. And Cass says he can go ahead with the match, and these officials, not realizing the most dangerous part of the skull you can get hit in is in the back, allows him to go ahead with this match. This is the kind of sanctioning you get in Louisiana. Anderson and Gallows are laughing in the ring. They call Cass a nerd. And then they come out for their match. Cass starts the match as well. And he's stumbling around here after a side slam to Anderson. Finally tags in Enzo. Gallows distracts him from the floor. Anderson hits him with the running boot. And then there's a sloppy super kick by Gallows as Enzo comes off the turnbuckle. And they hit the Magic Killer in 228. Cass was supposed to play the role of someone who could not control their movement. Enzo just naturally is that guy in the ring. And Anderson and Gallows win. They continue the attack on them when the Big Show runs down, only to help Enzo. Cass stares him down, and then he's upset at Enzo. His show leaves, and they argue in the ring.
Yeah, there was
the mystery continues.
Yeah, there was a Revival cameo in the background again, but I think because it's so obvious now that it won't be the Revival. As a result of this, the outcome of this match with Enzo getting pinned, can we scratch out Enzo as a suspect too? Because why would he have Cass attacked only for him to get beat up in a handicap match against Gallows?
Maybe he was on someone's shoulders.
What? What?
He said it was high. It hit him in the back of the head. So Enzo's too short on his own. Maybe he had an accomplice who helped him.
Okay, but
maybe it was Sally Graziano.
Fine, whatever. But why would Enzo do that right before their match against Gallows and Anderson, where he would have to face Gallows and Anderson by himself, ultimately taking the pinfall?
He wants him to get a secondary concussion because that's when the most dangerous damage is done to your head. It's not the initial blow, it's the secondary blow.
I know, but Enzo got hurt as a result of this.
I'm not saying he's smart. He wasn't planning to get hurt in this match. He didn't think he'd get tagged in. He let Cass start the match. His injured partner he let start, and then the asshole tagged
Well,
in.
then why wouldn't he just say, "Oh, you know what? You're hurt. We shouldn't start the match." He insisted on the match being starting, knowing that there was a risk of him getting attacked. Okay. Anyway,
I'm just trying to Jersey pride.
I'm just trying to rule out the suspects right now. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to be.
Doesn't make any sense to be Enzo. Does it still make sense that it could be Cass?
It could make sense to be Cass, but I don't like it. I think it's I faked the attacks.
That would be the dumbest thing. That'd be the dumbest
It's really
thing.
stupid.
So Big Show.
So what, you were just on wobbly legs for this entire match because you're such a great actor. For what? For what gain? What did Enzo get out of this attack? What happened to him that was so awful?
Right. So then, of course, there's the Big Show, who, again, for the similar reasons to the Revival, it is so kind of hitting you over the top of the head that I don't think it will be him. So I think it'll have to be somebody that is not any of these people that have been mentioned so far.
Well, it's got my interest. I won't lie.
Well, all I'm thinking is this better pay off.
Can you imagine they just drop it?
It's like an anonymous GM.
Yeah. It was just a guy in a Hummer.
Yeah, Hornswoggle.
Big Show is walking backstage after Enzo comes up and thanks him and says, you know, Cass is a big guy, and for one blow to take him down like that. And basically Enzo is asking Show, did you do this? And Show gets really upset at this accusation and tells Cass, or says to Enzo that Cass is soft, and walks off. Mm-hmm. So they're teasing that it's Big Show.
Yeah.
That's trying to get in between these two.
There's also a R-Truth segment.
Oh, we missed that. The R-Truth video. He quoted Cool Hand Luke about having a failure to communicate, which I think was a new one. He doesn't forgive or forget. He then quoted from Network and says the Goldust is going to get got.
From Network?
I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. It's from the movie Network.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So he definitely took some time this week to watch a movie other than Pulp Fiction or Shaft.
Yeah, I mean, he's going back in time. It seems like Cool Hand Luke. That's going way back. So they're regressing with their pop culture references,
which is, I think, good. I think. I mean, he wants to show depth of knowledge of films. I get that this is like the blaxploitation thing is sort of his theme, but I'll say like I don't think that like that type of soundtrack works with the tone of this angry promo that he's trying to cut.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I didn't really have any feeling anywhere. I'm not as interested in the truth ones. I liked it the first week. He feels very repetitive.
His definitely
doesn't really have a message behind it, nor is he, he's got a decent delivery.
Yeah, I'll say like in contrast to Goldust, where I'm waiting to get sick of those, I feel like I am already kind of sick of the truth ones. Something I was really looking forward to and hoping for with truth was that they take him out of the studio and have him do something maybe like out there. But I wonder if that's simply due to like lack of resources. You know, they seem to film all these the day up of the TV, right?
Dude, how long was this show? Like, we're not even at the main event yet. You and I have been talking for 80 minutes on this show.
Yeah, I don't know. Good question.
Was there that much to discuss?
I have no clue.
I think Bayley took a lot out of us. Mike Rome then interviews Samoa Joe backstage and says they're playing right into his strategy, that being Lesnar and Heyman, and felt they didn't take him seriously, so he sent a message last week. Tonight, Lesnar came out to declare that this is his house, and he went out and showed him who he was. And Brock will walk to the ring on July 9th, and he will put him to sleep with the coquina clutch. Very simple. That's all we need. No bears.
Effective. By far the best feud going on right now.
Then we got another Roman Reigns video package, and again they plugged him being on Raw next week in Evansville, Indiana, for his SummerSlam announcement. What do you think that will be?
Sorry, who's this?
Roman Reigns.
His SummerSlam announcement. He will show up and he will have a match against Finn Balor.
For SummerSlam.
Who's he supposed to face? Braun? No, that's Brock, right?
Probably. I wonder.
Yeah.
I wonder, and I have no knowledge of this. I'm only guessing because tonight we also saw the free agent thing. What if he challenges Cena?
Oh, you know what? That would be great. It's a great idea.
Like, that's a reason to have him on Raw to do angles with Roman.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the SummerSlam.
That's a great idea. I think that's a first time ever, isn't it?
Oh, that's a huge match.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to hold off on Cena and Jinder Mahal, because I do feel you get to that at some point, but that doesn't have to be SummerSlam.
I mean, I think Cena and Roman could be a Mania thing, but yeah, SummerSlam I think is as good as ever.
Well, if Roman's being groomed for Brock for Mania, I mean, now could be the time to do it, and that's obviously a huge SummerSlam match if they do it.
Is that the main event?
That could go on last. Could. I think it would have a ton of... I mean, that's going to be a super heated match. So, yeah, possible. Depends what the rest of the card is.
Well, and who do the fans cheer for in that instance?
Cena.
You think so?
Cena, I mean, it's not as... I mean, it's a mix, and I think at this point it's hardly the...
Yeah, so is Roman. They're both mixes.
I feel it's more for. No, I think it's going to be a big mix for the actual match, but I think it'll be incredible heat.
Is there a chance? The thing is, like, I was going to ask, is there a chance the crowd shits on both of them? But they'll shit on both of them, but they'll be electric as hell. Like they will be fully invested in that.
I think the match will be great.
Yeah, I think so too.
Then we had this Pizza Hut spot with Noam Dar eating this pizza when Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows come in. They take his pizza, or else they're going to tell Alicia Fox that Noam is cheating on her with pizza. Did I get this right?
Yes, you got it exactly.
Great. Then the final match of the night was a 2 out of 3 falls match with Cesaro and Sheamus against the Hardys. They blew through the first fall in 1 minute 8 seconds with Jeff coming out of the corner and getting hit with a brogue kick in the chest. Sheamus pinned him. Then they tied it up when Matt did the turnbuckle spots after a hot tag, hit a tornado DDT, side effect to Sheamus on the edge of the apron, and then delivered one to Cesaro and pinned him. Final fall featured Matt blocking a Gotch pile driver, and then Cesaro applied a sharpshooter. Matt got to the rope. Jeff comes in, and Cesaro nailed him with this uppercut from the floor. They did a couple of near falls here. Jeff leaped off the apron to take out Cesaro. They all fought on the floor. Cesaro then sent Matt into the barricade, and as they're fighting, all 4 get counted out. The fight continues. Matt back body drops Cesaro on the floor. Jeff went to the top for a high cross to both Sheamus and Cesaro, and it is declared a tie. So the big question, Way, was who did the draw better?
The 60-minute draw or the 10-minute draw?
Yeah. Which one built up to a rematch better?
You know what? Probably the one without the Pizza Hut commercial in between it. But yeah, I mean,
it was.
That said, okay. I don't know what the thinking was to do a 2 out of 3 falls match in 10 minutes, resulting in like. Okay.
With a commercial break in there.
Yeah. So Sheamus and Cesaro, neither of these guys could pin either Jeff or Matt for a whole 2 months in like 10 matches they've had with them. But here, in a minute, they're able to pin Jeff Hardy to get that first fall. Fine, whatever. All that said, I just think that this 2 out of 3 fall stip was completely unnecessary and probably not effective at all. But I'll say the crowd was incredibly hot once they got back from break for that final fall, and it resulted, I thought, in a very entertaining last few minutes of the show.
This one was just strange because you had the steel cage match, which led to the match where the ring couldn't contain them.
Right.
So now you've got to do a rematch in something that would require a cage, but shouldn't be a cage. Unless Jeff Hardy's getting his wish of a Hell in a Cell.
Right.
Which this does not feel like a feud that requires a Hell in a Cell.
Is that Jeff Hardy's wish?
That's what he said in the interview with Corey Graves. His dream is to have a Hell in a Cell match.
Does the result of this match immediately draw conclusions of Hell in a Cell?
Well, I mean, that's typically, you do a match like this that they couldn't contain them. It's got to build to some kind of stipulation match. And I pray to God it's not some ladder match because, I hate the idea that the Hardys always have to build to a ladder match. Like these guys and their poor bodies.
The next pay-per-view is Great Balls of Fire. How about an Inferno match? No?
Sure.
No, they don't really do those anymore. It's kind of hard to do a tag team match in an Inferno match. Kind of hard to stand on the apron when there are flames right there.
An Inspire to the Fire match.
How about a Paroxygen match? I'm so sorry. Sorry. Anyway.
Where you get, it's a no time limit, and whoever has the advantage can have an oxygen tank in their corner.
It's underwater. That's how you do a peroxide.
Oh, yeah.
It's underwater. Okay. It's in a pool, and they're hanging oxygen scuba masks on a pole. You got to just dive up and grab it, or jump up and grab it, and your opponents are trying to pull you down and drown you.
Wait, is this the Fountain of Youth? So Cesaro comes out with like long hair?
Dude, we'd be rich. Let's save all this. Let's save all this for off air, okay?
So that was Raw. Certainly wasn't at the level of last week's. Though we did have the angle at the beginning.
No, last week had some great segments with the Joe Heyman thing and also the Ambrose Miz segment. I thought follow-ups for the Joe Heyman segment were it was good this week. It was good. Not at the level, but I thought it progressed it and continued the momentum of it. The Dean and Miz segment this week, I thought kind of kept it at a level. Maybe for some people it lowered it. I think for John it certainly lowered it. But beyond that, it was just I think I'm a little disappointed at the Bray Rollins interaction here. I was not thrilled by that. The Bayley thing is certainly questionable. The women program is questionable at this point. What else have we got for Great Balls of Fire? Neville versus Tozawa, it looks like.
Presumably.
And perhaps maybe the answer to this Enzo and Cass mystery. And Truth and Goldust.
Yeah, that's probably the time to do that match. I think any longer you wouldn't want to prolong that. And some kind of pizza delivery match with Anderson and Gallows.
So basically what we're saying is Samoa Joe and Brock Lesnar is probably what we'll be tuning in for.
That is the hook for Great Balls of Fire. All right. We've been going really long here, so let's blast through this feedback here from the message board. First one is Jeremy, who enjoyed the Brock and Joe opening, and he goes on to have a question here. I watched the whole Dominion event. It was awesome. Didn't feel like it dragged in-ring talent in New Japan as top quality. Whether it be a pay-per-view or just a TV match, they always seem to deliver. My question is, does the WWE have the talent that they could put on higher quality matches? And if so, why don't they? Do you think it's how the wrestlers are booked, or are the undercard and midcard told not to go out as to not outshine the main event? First of all, that's very much how New Japan cards as well are structured. I mean, the undercard, they're not going out there either to necessarily steal the show. They're not, those matches are not, those are typical of your multi-man tags that are kind of just there to get a lot of guys on the shows. The fact is, I don't see that the WWE could necessarily put on a card like Dominion with the kind of talent they have. I mean, they have some tremendous talent, but you're talking about, Omega, Okada, Tanahashi, Naito, Kushida, Hiromu Takahashi. And while there is a talent that I think could perform at that level in the WWE, it's such a different kind of presentation at this point where you're not getting cards like that.
So you're saying the talent level is there or isn't there?
In the WWE, I'm looking at Dominion where I think that kind of skews everything higher as well. I mean, we're comparing it to such a, you're not going to get that at Great Balls of Fire.
Of course not. But
regardless of the talent.
Let's say you just did a roster swap of all the guys from the WWE are suddenly in New Japan and all the New Japan roster are suddenly in Vince McMahon's WWE. Do you think you would get a match comparable to the quality of Dominion?
I feel that the WWE roster, if you were to strip away a lot of what I think brings these personalities down, yes, you could have matches that get over a lot better. I think the Cruiserweight Classic showed that.
Absolutely. So I guess the Jeremy's question is, why is it that we don't see those types of matches in the WWE? But we do. We do see them occasionally. They're just much more rare.
Yeah, they are. And there's a first of all, I think if you're talking about the top 6 guys in New Japan versus the top 6 in the WWE, I feel that it's not a knock against WWE that I don't feel that their guys are at that same.
I'm kind of curious. Who do you think are the top 6 in the WWE?
Based on who's pushed right now?
No, not in terms of. I'm talking about in-ring talent, in-ring ability.
You'd have
AJ.
I guess you've got AJ,
Rollins,
Balor, Rollins.
Do you put Brock in there? I would. I think Brock would be great in that scenario.
Brock wasn't great in New Japan when he was there a decade ago. He was pretty terrible there.
But I imagine what a Brock Lesnar would add to a Dominion if he was on that show against talent of that caliber, you know? Also, Nakamura. So you're telling me that those 6 are not comparable to the 6 that we saw at Dominion? Joe, I'm not even thinking about Joe. Kevin Owens. Like, the talent is amazing. Cesaro.
Yeah, listen, they're incredible on both sides, but I lean to the New Japan side.
Interesting debate. And one I like having. Give us your top 6 from the WWE. Your dream 6 versus your dream New Japan 6. And who has the better roster? Who, in terms of at least the top 6, has more higher quality top 6? My turn? Yep. Okay, we go to Alex from Portland, who wants to know, with Stephanie coming back, it's more likely that Triple H will return. Who do you see his next feud and WrestleMania opponent being? The only people I find him to feud with are currently on SmackDown. Triple H's next program. Hello?
Triple H's next program. Could be Kurt.
Could be Kurt, yep. I think that's sort of a natural story that kind of writes itself. Who's the babyface right now? You know, I mean, maybe when you're talking about that stage, you know, you could be looking at a Samoa Joe. You could be looking at, I don't think it'd be Braun. I think Braun will probably be heel.
No, Joe's probably the next pick.
Yeah, or Finn Balor.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm going to go down here. Alexander from Portland. Miz and Ambrose deserve so much better. Ambrose's character has more than jumped the shark. I loved his Kingpin character he had roughly a year ago, where he didn't do any loony antics and was an extremely confident badass, but WWE sees more in his lunatic gimmick. One of the worst segments this year has brought and made nobody look good coming out of it. Skips down here with Stephanie coming back. It's more likely that Triple H will return. Is that the one you just read?
Yeah, but I didn't read the feedback. I only read the question.
Okay. Well,
we go to Mark from Vaughn. I'm only reading questions just because we're so low on time.
Yeah.
Mark from Vaughn wants to know, how much more physicality would you want to see in the build-up to Joe versus Brock? I'd prefer to see more of a UFC build with promo packages rather than the standard Heyman promos. Well, I think that's a formula that certainly worked for both of these men in the past. Is it something they're relying too much on, though, for your Brock Lesnar feuds, the UFC build? Is that too predictable? You know, and is it too overused for Brock Lesnar for this week?
I don't think it's used enough, to be honest. I feel that they've, the typical Brock programs, it's Heyman promos and then maybe one physical angle. I don't think they've truly gone out of the box and done something like I go back to what they did for Lockdown that one year, where they really invested a lot in that and went a totally different route with Lesnar. I mean, they have the video packages with Lesnar at times with, like the sit down interview style that they cut up. But in terms of Brock and kind of showing him outside of the ring and filming stuff with him outside, I mean, they haven't done a ton of that.
But I'll say the UFC thing, as it relates to Samoa Joe, has really been downplayed. They're not pushing Joe like an MMA guy. He's just, quote unquote, the destroyer, So I don't see them pushing Joe with a UFC level of build. Instead, I'd like to see Joe do more of what he did last week, threatening Paul Heyman, being this legitimately scary man. And I'd like to see them continue to build him like that. This scary dude who threatens people off the microphone and hurts them and really build him up to the level of a Brock Lesnar, to the point that I think your audience will really feel like he'll have a chance of beating him.
Let's go here to Billy from Louisiana. I was at Raw in Lafayette tonight. Outside of the Joe Lesnar brawl, this was a throwaway show. It's pretty clear that the The WWE knew that they'd get trounced in the ratings by the NBA Finals and decided to mail it in, which is unfortunate for the fans. By far the biggest pop of the night was Roman in the dark match against Bray with loud "Let's go Roman, Roman sucks" chants. The biggest losers of the night were the poor members of the ring crew who worked hard to apply and remove the purple tape for cruiserweight matches that lasted a total of about 30 seconds combined. What a waste. It was actually 7 seconds. We had the 7-second match, and that was it. And then Neville's and Swan never started.
I assume that there's a lot of inventory of purple tape out there. Because who's buying purple tape?
The company every week.
Yeah.
They're committed to that tape.
Well, I'm assuming that they probably have no shortage of purple tape, is what I mean. Sean H. from Calgary. Do you think Lesnar destroys Joe, or do we get a legitimate 15 to 20-minute awesome match?
I think you've got to go at least 15 to 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't think this should be a short match.
I think it should be. Yeah, I mean, I feel like Joe is like really hot right now, and I think they have with them another monster they could build on the level of a Brock, on the level of a Braun Strowman. That's just there for him, and to have him get squashed would be just ruining all of that. When you can easily move Joe over to SmackDown, for instance, and have him be the monster of that division. So I hope they understand what they have with Joe. We go to let me just fire off maybe 2 more questions. We go to Carl from Surrey. Assuming Braun is returning to face Brock, are Roman and Cena ready to collide to get a big match on the SummerSlam card? We kind of answered that, didn't we?
Yeah, I think it's not knowing where they're going. It's possible. I think. It's obviously a big enough match, and I think it's one that they do have to do at least once. And now might be the best shot if they've got plans for Reigns at WrestleMania and you want something big for SummerSlam. Last one here is Chris from Melbourne. Do you think fans see the cruiserweights on WWE as a lesser product because they are on their own island? I watched Dominion on Sunday, and their junior heavyweights are equals on the cards and just as over with the fans.
Is it the purple tape?
The purple tape. It's been a hindrance.
Beyond the purple tape, I guess it's the idea that they kind of don't interact very much. It's starting to become different, but they don't really interact in meaningful ways. They're not involved in stables with main roster guys and are kind of just ignored by the main roster. Does that have anything to do with it?
I mean, if you're just watching Raw, like why would you be into these guys on this show tonight? You had one guy who's on his phone with his girlfriend the whole time. And I mean, they're in throwaway segments.
Yeah. I think that's a bigger issue. Yep, it's a storyline. But I feel like we've talked about that a lot.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up the show. It's been a lengthy one tonight as we have gone through everything regarding Raw. So we'll be back on Wednesday chatting about SmackDown and whatever else is going down on Tuesday night. You can also download The Law from Sunday night, featuring our rundown of Dominion and all of our other shows coming out this week, including we have a new preview of Money in the Bank coming out later this week, all of our regular shows, so go check it out, liveaudiowrestling.com.
Also, Jason Agnew is on a new podcast, isn't he?
He is, yes. Whoops, I muted there. The link for that interview.
Jason Agnew was recently interviewed on the Never Sleeps Network with Alex Ross to discuss his many projects, including The Law and more, at neversleepsnetwork.com. So do check that out.
Awesome stuff. All right, that is it, and we will chat with you on Wednesday.
Do you think we can end this on a hug?